Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Patreon podcast. This week I wanted to talk about the idea of fixing the little things. And I guess there's really two ways to come at this idea, and I'm going to try to go with both. The first one is to fix the little things to just kind of help you learn and remember things better. And the second thing is to fix the little things until you find that point of diminishing returns. And really, those are two different ideas, but I wanted to talk about both of them. So the first one, my best example with this is fixing typos. I like words, and I like language, and I like the idea of being correct when I write and not having to rely on spell check. I feel that it's important to me to spell things correctly without the need for spell check, because I do write things by hand, and I want to make sure that those are, still accurate. So when I do write something, when I type something out on the computer and that little red line appears underneath the word, I try to fix it. I try to manually type it again until I type it correctly. And this usually helps teach me how to spell better, because I'm forcing myself to write it correctly without relying on the spell check. And eventually, if I can't figure it out, then I, run to the spell check, and maybe I'll type it out a couple times to get the muscle memory. But I feel that it's really important, and I think that it actually can go a long way to work on fixing the little things like that, where if you have small issues, or if you're trying to get better at something, to build the habit of doing it correctly without relying on automation to fix the problem for you. And I think that actually can go a long way when it comes to being professional, like when you're making marketing content, or you're sending emails, or all this other stuff that requires a quick turnaround. If you don't have to rely on automated processes to fix your mistakes. And it's not necessarily about just spelling, but that's kind of the example that I have in my mind right now that I think is really prevalent for me. That's something that I definitely work on the most is spelling and making sure that everything's okay. But the other side of that, the maybe is a little bit more relevant to creative stuff, is fixing the little things until you find that point of diminishing returns. And what I mean by that is that when you're fixing an album, or when you're fixing a book or a painting or something, there are always tweaks you can make. There's always something that you can change that might make it a fraction of a percentage point better. But at some point, you're spending so long to find those tweaks, those changes, that it's not really worth your time to continue that endeavor. Which is to say, you don't really want to spend 3 hours making a change that nobody will notice but you, but it does really make the song better. I think that it's important to find that point of diminishing returns, and really that point is different for everybody. Nobody's going to have the same opinion on that. But it's so important to find that point, because it'll give you the opportunity to just say, hey, I'm done with this now. I can put this out into the world and be happy with it. Because it's very easy to spend way too long on a project and just not get any more value out of it as far as quality is concerned. Sometimes you just need to call it done. There's something that I say during the 2-hour track challenges a lot, and that's good enough. And sometimes you have to find that good enough and be okay with it. And really, it comes down to being okay with it, being okay with it being flawed, not perfect. Because, we've talked about perfection in the past, but perfection is not something that you can achieve. So why bother trying to get there? The point with perfection is to move in that direction, not necessarily to get there. So make the little changes, always be aware of them, and change and make those fixes as often as possible. But once you reach a point that you're spending so much time on each small change, it's probably better to find that good enough and become okay with what you have rather than spending hours and hours making tiny tweaks that nobody's really going to notice. Because it's not just diminishing returns as far as like how much time you spent versus what changes you made, like physically in the project, but just the smaller the change you make, the less likely somebody's going to notice that it happened anyway. I'm always baffled by musicians specifically who spend so long on minor tweaks. And this is completely personal. This is not a dig on them, but I'm always so baffled when I hear, oh, I spent 2 months mastering this album. I worked like 6 hours every day on it. And it's just like, dude, that's a lot of work. I don't think and their threshold for good enough is much higher than mine. I feel that the music that I make is at a particular place that I'm very happy with, and the people who spend that much time working on their cats just knocked some stuff over. The people that spend so much time working on, mastering and the minor tweaks, it's like their threshold is much higher, and they have a standard for quality that they want to meet. But I also feel like in that 2 months time where they spent mastering the album, they probably could have written half another album. But it really kind of depends on, their workflow. And again, all of this is personal, and all of this is very required a mindful mindset toward the work that you do. So it's all something that you have to kind of just keep in mind while you're working and figure it out as you go. So that's pretty much everything I had to talk about today. Thank you so much for being a Patreon supporter. And again, thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you later. Be remarkable.